Right now, though, Boughton Law is CKNW's on-air legal analyst for 2015. Today, we're talking about succession planning for private business owners. The discussion does not constitute legal advice. Bill Cooper with Boughton joins me live in the studio this morning. Bill is a tax lawyer and associate counsel at Boughton Law. Good morning.
Good morning, John.
Thanks for coming in.
Absolutely.
When I was talking to my producers yesterday about succession planning for private business, they kind of went, really? What's that all about? But when you look at the amount of money that is involved potentially in terms of business, in terms of the economy, it is a fantastic figure. Talk about that.
Yeah, $3.7 trillion. This is not our numbers. This is a CIBC study done a couple years ago. Over the next 10 to 20 years, that money will be changing hands from one generation to the next, whether it's planned or not.
$3.7 trillion.
It's a crazy number.
Wow.
And the thing about this is that their study shows that of the retirement group, ages 55 to 60, a majority of them haven't done the planning. There's nothing going on.
Okay, so what happens if a person owns a business, it's a family business, or even if it has investors and shareholders, what happens when that person dies and there is no succession planning?
You end up with a real mess. It's a dogfight. It's like the guy who goes to the garage. They say, fix it, pay me now or pay me later.
Yeah.
It's much worse if you end up dealing with the estate lawyers. I've seen situations where we had 6 kids. Every one of them had their own lawyer.
Oh, man.
Yeah, their own accountant. The trustee calls me up. He says, what do I do? It's a mess. So that's what you get when you don't do proper planning.
So there is the potential there for long and protracted, and we hear about it all the time, long and protracted court cases, and the lawyers get lots of money, but
the lawyers get lots of money, and we've seen lots of notable families around town here, the Bentos and the Loheeds. There's lots of examples.
And so let's go to the good stuff now. When should people start thinking about succession planning for a business?
Well, really, once you hit age 50 or so, you should be, you start off, you talk to your accountant. I mean, people hate looking at their wills, but, take your will into your accountant. You got a business, you got kids. What's the plan?
Right.
You need to start talking about it. The sooner the better.
And obviously it's necessary because of this $3.7 trillion transferring. I mean, that's just incredible over the next 10 to 20 years, and a lot of those people aged 55 to 64 haven't even discussed this transition plan.
They haven't talked to their business co-owners or their anybody, really.
So what are some of the big challenges in sitting down and getting started on this?
Yeah, these are people, the successful people who are typically very busy. They're typically single owners. They're running the business, chief cook and bottle washer. They don't have time. And then on the other hand, you've got this very difficult task, parsing out the business between, 3 or 4 kids. You're going to have to make decisions. And it's just like dealing with wills. People don't like dealing with those issues. That's the tough stuff. So it gets put to one side. And this is typically what happens until somebody has a heart attack or something serious happens. I had 2 7-year-old clients who'd done no planning. 72, the guy's got a threat of cancer. And then the next thing you know, his partner goes in. He's also got cancer.
Yikes.
Yeah, 72 is a bit late to be doing the tax planning, although in that case we got away with it.
And then you've got the family dynamic, which we mentioned a bit earlier. You have all of that because it isn't just black and white bottom line stuff. You've got all the family emotions get in there. And
I have to read thousands of pages of technical stuff. That isn't the tough stuff. The tough stuff is dealing with the family, trying to sort out between who gets what and how is this business going to be transitioned and what makes the most sense. That is absolutely the toughest part of what I do for a living.
So what are the options? What routes can people go once they've come to the conclusion that, hey, I better do something about this? What's open to them?
Yeah, the most obvious thing is the family transition, but that assumes you've got somebody capable in the family of doing it. If it's not the family transition, then there's an actual arm's length sale, but that takes preparation, and you got to do careful planning. Some guys are looking at doing employee buyouts because it's good to bring on a key employee, so you give them a piece of the action. But again, all of this takes planning. This isn't something that's going to happen in a space of 6 months. This takes years. If you don't do any of that, you end up with a business wind-up or a fight amongst the family members.
And a business wind-up is simply going out of business and liquidating whatever
and
assets.
paying lots of tax.
Paying lots of tax.
Paying lots of tax. And that's, of course, where we come in. The whole idea is to transition these businesses with a minimal amount of tax from one generation to the next.
And which of these 4 or 5 ideas is best in terms of taxes?
It really depends. Each one has its own fact scenario. There's really no best scenario. When we meet with people, we tend to look at it and see what we can do. There's things you can do in each case if you have enough time. A lot of cases, the problem is we get the guy who's got the problem already. There's no time to really reorganize the business. But if they come to us soon enough, then there's lots of opportunity to make changes, to set the business up. So whether it's a family transition or going to an arm's length sale, if you've got time, you can save money. I mean, right off the top, there's 23 points of capital gains tax, or even worse.
Yeah.
If you're actually winding up the business, you can end up losing 40% of your business.
Wow.
So it's a problem if it's not dealt with.
How small a business? Going down the line from medium sized to a mom and pop shop. How far? What am I trying to say? How small a business should think about succession planning?
I would say pretty much. You got $100,000. That's a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't matter. And we have something called the capital gains exemption. I can come back to, but if you don't do the planning, most successful business corporations, the shares of those corporations do not qualify for this $800,000 freebie from the government because they're successful and they have investment assets inside their company. So this is something a lot of people don't realize. This exemption was put in place to encourage small business because that's where all the new jobs are.
Right.
And the bottom line is most successful small businesses don't qualify for it.
Wow. All right. We'll find out more from Bill Cooper, a tax lawyer, associate counsel with Boughton Law. This is part of our Boughton Law series this year. And when we come back, we're going to talk more about how to accomplish the family transition and how to do a sale if you're going to sell shares or assets. We'll get into all of that coming up next here on CKNW News Talk 980 and the John McComb Show for Thursday. Businesses with a total value of $3.7 trillion will transfer or transition in the next 10 to 20 years. 60% of those owners aged 55 to 64 have not discussed their transition plans with their business partners or families. That's why Bill Cooper is here this morning. He's with Boughton Law as a tax lawyer and associate counsel, and we are discussing succession planning. You were saying off air the capital gains exemption, which is $800,000, has some hooks to it. One of them is that families cannot take advantage of it. If you're giving your business to your son or
right. So, probably your number one transition plan would be to transition the business to the next generation of the family.
Right.
And the Conservatives introduced this capital gains exemption concept, started out at $500,000, and now it's up to $800,000 per individual on a sale of shares. So the whole idea was it was an incentive because the government of the time knows that that's where all the new jobs come from. It's all these small entrepreneur companies generating new business, new jobs. So this is their sort of their bonus. Here's the cherry. Go work hard, and when you're finished, at the end of the day, you get this exemption. So, the exemption's worth a tax savings of 23 points on $800,000. That's $170,000, give or take. It's a lot of money. And particularly if you got a mom and pop operation, you got 2 of those, lots of businesses are worth a couple $1 million easily. Mm-hmm. So the problem is that the exemption doesn't apply if you want to transition the business to your kids. So you say mom and pop, say, got a business worth $2 million. They have no pension plan because it's a private company.
Right.
They need to sell that business to their kids. They're going to do it on good terms. They're going to make it easy for them, but they still need the money. And they're thinking to themselves when they come to my office, oh, well, we got $1.6 million of tax-free money, so if we pay tax on $400,000, no big deal. Unfortunately, the way the rules work is you can only access that if it's an arm's length sale.
Oh.
So it's a bizarre set of rules, but basically, because typically where the money is coming from, it's coming from the business. And the government says, we give special treatment to active businesses. They get a very low rate of tax, 13.5 points in BC. When you take your money out, we want you to pay the same tax as if you'd own the business as a proprietorship, which is 44%. So we don't want you getting the capital gains rate. So essentially we have this dichotomy where people think, gee, I built this business up, we got $1.6 million, it's tax-free, we can retire, we're in good shape. Oh, by the way, you can't have it. You got to sell your business to an arm's-length person.
So now you're starting to understand why this the concept of succession planning is so, it's necessary, but can be complicated, and there are some surprises potentially along the way. So it's something you have to start thinking about, and earlier the better.
Exactly, because there are other things you can do in the scenario I just gave you. I mean, I had a couple come into my office with this problem probably 5 years ago, and we ended up doing something different for them, where the money still essentially got out tax-free. But it took 10 years to do it. So they couldn't get access to the exemption, but oftentimes, there's a lot of creative people out there. I'm one of an army of about 10,000 people who spend all their day and nights thinking of ways to sort of beat the government, or at least keep the taxes reasonable.
Right.
And, obviously to a business, I mean, we have provisions in our Income Tax Act that allow farming and fishing business to be transferred from one generation to the next without taxes. You get the same problem when you got a small business. I mean, if you had to fork over 23% of your money to the government, it makes it very hard for the next generation to carry on. Where do they get the money?
Yeah. And so and you say 10 years, I mean, that's a long time.
It is.
But
if you're thinking in terms of a pension plan for mom and dad,
right,
and they want to keep the business in the family, that's not such a bad option.
Yeah.
And in fact, in some cases, we even take security on the underlying assets, so they're protected.
So, in simple terms, how do you start this? What if somebody's listening to this and thinking, oh yeah, those guys are absolutely right, Bill's right, I got to get this going. What do they do?
Well, I'd love to say come and see your favorite tax lawyer, but
Bill Cooper. He's at Boughton Law.
That's not the way to start. Go and talk to your accountant, grab your wills, which are probably out of date, and go in and sit down with your accountant after your next set of financials are done and say, hey, Joe, I need to get a plan here because my family. I've got the one son who's got a drug problem. My daughter really has no interest in the business, and the other one's kind of young. What do we do? But if you get that started with your accountant, they'll have somebody they can go to because you need to know something about family law, income tax law, estate law. I mean, you need all these other areas of expertise, which is where a guy like I come in. I mean, that's sort of a one-off thing, but go and talk to your accountant and get the process going.
Bill Cooper, tax lawyer, associate counsel with Boughton Law. And a reminder, this discussion does not constitute legal advice. If you want more, and I'm sure you do, you can go to the Boughton Law page on our website for more information at cknw.com/Boughton Law.